Hi everybody, I'm starting a new series showing you EnergyXT, which is my digital audio workstation of choice. I've made some videos about this a long time ago, and I've had some recent interest, and this is definitely something that I am interested in. It fits with my channel because it's sharing creativity and tips. It's a whole nother expression that I am deeply interested in as far as creation and creativity. That's making music. So I'm going to start by giving you the getting started guide with EnergyXT. If you've never used a digital audio workstation before, especially if you've never used EnergyXT, it's not very well known. It's a very interesting piece of software, and I'm excited to share it with you. Let's jump right in. So this is what you see the first time that you open up EnergyXT. I think this retails right now for about $25. It's really affordable, especially for as much power is packed into this really streamlined, lightweight application. And that's what I love about it, is that it's really simple, it's clutter-free, very minimal, and lightweight. It launches almost instantly. It doesn't take a lot of power to have to use, and it doesn't come with a whole bunch of pre-built libraries and presets. Now that might be something that you're looking for, but for me in my workflow, because I like to get in and really mess with the nitty-gritty and do a lot of sound design and make things up myself, this is just a great package for me. So we're going to create an empty project, but I want to talk about a couple of prerequisites before even getting started. If you're on Windows especially, what you're going to need is an Audio sound card or a virtual Audio driver. And the one that I recommend, I'm just going to pull it up right here, is Audio for All. It's a free and incredibly powerful universal Audio driver that basically gives you lower latency, better performance, and it works really, really well with EnergyXT. So this is where you can find it, audioforall.org. You can download the language that you need and get it installed. It's very, very quick and easy. You don't have to have it installed before you install EnergyXT, but you probably will really want to have this installed on your computer. Now, to make sure that you have that Audio driver selected, go to File, Setup, and under your audio tab here, you want to change this from DS, which is the direct sound, to Audio. If you have an external Audio sound card, like a USB or FireWire audio interface, you can select it from here. But you can also use the Audio for All with those external sound cards, which is what I'm doing right now. Now this will launch automatically in the background the next time you open up EnergyXT. So once you get your Audio for All installed and you change your device in the setup menu in EnergyXT to the Audio for All sound driver, this is what will be running in the background. And you might see a pop-up the first time. I've just disabled that pop-up. So as you can see in here too, this is kind of neat. It uses a WDM device driver. And I can see all of my other sound cards. So in this case, I have two sound cards connected, but it also shows my webcam, which is currently off. And the XOS KS108 is what I'm using to record the audio right now. And I have that turned off for EnergyXT so that it doesn't take over my sound card and try to use it in the application. So what I'm doing is recording with my built-in sound card, but using the Audio sound driver with Audio for All. Basically, it makes your built-in sound card work with these kinds of applications. This will also work for programs like Fruity Loops or FL Studio. You can use the Audio for All. There's several producers that are using this Audio for All sound driver. Basically, what I'm saying is get Audio for All, then launch EnergyXT. If you have any MIDI devices or MIDI keyboards, such as I'm using here, this is the MIDI Plus AKM 320. It's a very inexpensive. You can order it on Amazon, and it doesn't need MIDI cables. It just plugs into the computer through a USB cord. So I really like that. And when that is installed, in this case, this one's a plug and play. So as long as it's plugged in before I start EnergyXT, it will show up here in my MIDI input devices, and I just have to make sure it's selected. So that's how I get my audio and my MIDI hooked up and ready to use. Now there's a lot of other options and features in here. I just want to show you the ones that I have tweaked and changed. All right, so under the browser tab, that's the other thing that you're going to want to visit when you're first getting your application set up. We have a folder for projects, plugins, presets, loops and clips, and samples. Now the ones that I suggest that you add your own folder structure to is for plugins, because this is a VST host, and I can talk more about VST plugins. I will probably be doing that extensively in this series, but all you have to do is click add. It will open up a file browser, and you just navigate to where your VST plugins are going to be saved. If you don't have any yet, you can leave this alone for now. The other one that I suggest you do is samples, because I use a lot of samples in my music creation. So you can add multiple files if you want. And I've just basically added a folder that is in my music folder that I've called samples, and it will pull in all of the samples. And I manage that outside of EnergyXT just in my file browser. So in here, I've got a folder of samples and just a whole bunch of folders inside of more folders. And that's how I organize all of my sound assets. So we've got the audio setup. We've got the MIDI device set up. And we've got some asset folders set up for plugins and for samples. We can also change the look of this. There's a couple of skins already installed if you want a light skin. I keep it just on the dark skin, but you can actually find and download new skins and add them in here as well and make this look different. You can also customize the colors of like everything. So if you don't like this orange and gray color scheme, you can change it and create your own skin. It's really, really powerful. Shortcuts is another one that I've modified, and there are shortcuts and modifier keys for all kinds of things. So if you don't like Control R being rename, if you'd rather have that record or start the recording, you could change it. Zooming in and zooming out, those are things that I've changed. I've taken the modifier keys off of that, so I just use the plus and minus keys for zooming in and zooming out. So there's a lot of ways that you can set this up and customize it to make sure that it works with your workflow. And if you're coming from another digital audio workstation or would like to use the same gestures and keystrokes from another application that maybe you're more familiar with, you can set it up to be more like that for yourself. All right, so that's the basic setup and getting started. Before we even start making music or getting into the different areas of the application, those are some things that you're gonna wanna have set up and good to go. Now that that's done, let's go ahead and press Control N to create a new project. And now we're in just a blank, empty project. Now let me just go over very briefly for the rest of this video, a tour of EnergyXT and what we see here. We've already looked at some things in the file menu. We have new, open, save, save as, all of our normal things that you might find in any desktop application. We can also save a current project as the default project. So if you want to set up like your sends, your returns, any insert effects or channels or instruments that you want to use on a regular basis, you can create basically a template project for yourself and set that as your default starting project. So every time you create a new project, it will load all of those things, which really comes in pretty handy. We can also export the project from here. We can import MIDI files. We can export MIDI files. We saw the setup menu already, and there's some other options in here with also some recent projects down at the bottom. Tracks is our next menu option, which is the view that we are looking at right now. The next one's Mixer, which switches us to the Mixer page. And we're going to get more in depth into these different areas in videos to come. This is just an overview tour. Next, we have Channel, which we can just add a group from this menu. We can also add it from this button right here in the Mixer page. by clicking Add Group right there. So it does the same thing. If I go to Channel, Add Group, it will add a group here. If I click Add Group here, it will add a group the same way. I'll delete those for now just by right-clicking and selecting Delete. The next one we have is Window. This gives you some control over how the windows behave. We can show and hide the browser here. We can show and hide the mixer. We can also go to the modular view, which is going to take a whole nother video. If we choose MIDI in, this will actually give us a on-screen MIDI keyboard, and we can go back to the sequencer from there as well. Back in our sequencer or tracks view, we have additional menus for track. So depending on what we have selected here in our sequencer, this will be more relevant, but we can add tracks, we can freeze them, we can edit, we can rename, we can delete, we can move them into a folder, which is actually a folder like a group folder of tracks, not a file folder, and we can minimize those tracks. Parts are what exist on the tracks, whether it's an audio part or a MIDI part. So this will give us some functions like quantize, duplicate, unghost, glue, split, rename, mute, delete, and save as. We can save a snippet or a part that is on a track and tuck it away for later use. Under options, we've got monitor. These will be things, again, that we'll get into later on. I just, again, want to give you a brief tour. There's more options here. You can show the mixer strip. You can have the small mixer strip view. We can show the object bar. This will make a lot more sense as we get into this, but I want to show you where all of this is. This menu here under options is also where you have auto scroll. So if you're playing your song, the view of the sequencer will move along with the playhead. I usually turn that off. I also click show note names. That will show me the name of the MIDI note, like whether it's A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, when I'm in a piano roll view. Then we have, again, our window menu and then a help menu here as well. All right, so that's our menu. Our next set of buttons up here is a quick way of showing and hiding the browser. That's our first button. This is our project list, so we can pull down some recent projects. Right now we're just in a new project. Once we name this, we'll see the name of the project right there. We've got some undo and redo buttons. This is a quick way of exporting. It's a little wave file icon. It looks just like a wave that's fading out. That's a quick way of exporting the entire project. Then we have the MIDI controller. This will be useful if you want to map certain functions to MIDI controls. Then we have our metronome. Now, to access options for the metronome, you have to right-click on it. Left-clicking will just turn it on or off. If we right-click, we can get some additional options. We can have it on during recording. We can give ourselves a count in and how many beats we want that to count in. And then we can also change the volume of the metronome. Then we have our BPM, or the speed of our song. We can change this by double-clicking and typing it in. We can also click and drag to change the tempo. Next, we have our transport controls: play, stop, rewind to start, whether our loop mode is on or off, and our record button. This group of numbers indicates the time that we're at. So as I move forward in time on the sequencer here, we can see now we're at 9 seconds. If we click on this, it will change it to the citation, or measures and beats. I prefer to have it on time so that I can see how long the song is. And lastly, we have our monitor volume, which is the overall volume that we're sending out of EnergyXT. And we can click and drag to change that. I leave it all the way up. All right, now we have the bigger areas of EnergyXT. We've already talked about the browser. That's on the left-hand side. All of these are toggled down like tree view or list view. So here's my samples, here's my plugins. Those are pulling from the folders that I set up earlier. We have this lighter gray area right here. This is where our tracks are going to be listed. Then we have this big empty canvas. This is our sequencer. because there's nothing in here right now, it doesn't look like much. But if we right click in this area here, we can get options very quickly, like being able to add something. Let's just try out that and see what we can do. All right, so we can add, and here's what we can add: drum, instrument, audio recording, or MIDI. Let's just try drum, and we can choose the number of tracks here. I can leave it at 1, or I can click and drag to add, let's just say 8. So I'm going to add 8 new drum tracks. I'll click OK, and I'll show you what that does. So now it looks like we have something in here now. So these are my tracks. This is the sequencer, and I've got 8 drum tracks in here right now. Now by default, this is loaded up the drum sampler that's built into EnergyXT. More videos on that to come, but this will now give us some sound to play with. And each of these tracks has loaded in a default kit. It's all the same kit because we chose to just add 8 drum tracks. We'll go back to right clicking here on our tracks list area and click add again, and I'll show you what an instrument does. I'll just add 1 this time. Now we have an instrument track. This is an empty instrument track, but now you can see as I toggle it down, we have a piano roll. Let's just quickly see what this has done in our mixer page. So on my keyboard, I pressed F2 to quickly switch to my mixer page. Now we have some stuff happening here in the sequencer. Here's our 8 drum tracks. We have an instrument track in here, but it's not connected to any instrument yet. What's cool about this is that we can add either a new output to this instrument, and it could be something from a MIDI out device, so an actual like analog machine that has MIDI capabilities, or we could add a built-in synthesizer, or maybe one of our VST instruments. Let's just add the built-in synthesizer. Now there's a much easier way to do this just by right-clicking and saying synthesizer. This will add the default synthesizer. And we can start playing with it. And there's some patches in here already for you to mess with. So that's drums and the synthesizer. There's more things that we can add, such as audio recordings, which will just set up an audio channel. And I'll talk more about how you can record live audio into EnergyXT in videos to come. We also have a guitar amp, which will be an audio channel with guitar amp effect on the insert. And we can see that in the mixer strip. An easier way to see what's happening here is to turn on your mixer strip here so that you can see exactly what's happening. You can also do a lot of mixing right over here in the mixer strip. So as I click through these, you can see this heading here, or the label changes. Here's a drum sampler, it changes the icon. Here's an instrument, it tells me it's going through the synthesizer, it changes the icon. If I select an audio track, it changes the icon and it tells me this is an audio recording. And on our guitar amp that we added, it has a guitar amp emulator. This is just a built-in guitar amp, which actually works really well. We can also add just a MIDI out. Again, this will be covered in more videos to come. Now, in our sequencer area here, we can either create clips or record by having a track selected and pressing record. Because I didn't record anything, it's just created an empty clip here. Now, the drum tracks act differently than a MIDI track. Another way of creating a clip or a part is just by double clicking. So now I have a piano roll for this synthesizer. I can double click in the part to start adding notes and draw in my piano roll. The drum grid is a little bit different. We just have blocks rather than a piano roll. So just by double clicking, creating some parts on the tracks that we added, we can quickly start making some music. Not that this is very good, but this is just a demonstration. The last area or major element of EnergyXT is the mixer, which we've already talked about a little bit. This is where you can customize and add insert effects and really get an overall view of your track. As we play, we get the meters that start reading, and they're all going to our output over here. We can also set up our audio in and add insert effects so that those tracks or that incoming audio will be affected before it gets to our sequencer channel. And we can add effects to our output as well. So I hope that gives you a brief overview tour of EnergyXT, just kind of showing you where all of the devices and areas of the software are located. We're going to dive deeper into this piece of software because even though it's minimal and streamlined, it's really, really powerful and feature rich. I still think it's probably simpler than something like Pro Tools, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper. So look for more videos to come, and thanks for watching. Bye for now.